करने वाली बात तो ये है कि ऐसा करने के लिए उन हिंदुओं को ये नाटक करना पड़ेगा कि वे पड़ोसी देश से भागे हुए प्रताड़ित माइनॉरिटी हैं, और वहीं दूसरी तरफ असम में प्रताड़ित हुए हिंदू सिख 2014 वाली डेडलाइन के कारण शायद सीएए के तहत शरण के लिए अप्लाई भी ना कर पाए।
अच्छा, तो हम क्या करें? बस इन इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स को अपने बॉर्डर्स पर हावी होने दें?
राज्य एनआरसी के बाहर सभी लोगों को इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स बुलाना बहुत गलत बात है। असम के हजारों ऐसे नागरिक हैं जिनके डॉक्यूमेंट्स मनमाने तरीके से रद्द कर दिए गए। ऐसा करने से कई परिवार टूट गए, क्योंकि एक ही परिवार के एक भाई की नागरिकता रद्द हो गई तो दूसरे की स्वीकार। बीजेपी की ये दोहरी नीति है कि वो हिंदुओं की प्रताड़ना का इस्तेमाल करके एक ऐसे सांप्रदायिक कानून को लाना चाह रहे हैं जो सिर्फ मुसलमानों को टारगेट करता है।
This detention center in India's Assam state is set to open in a few months. But India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, says it doesn't even exist.
उड़ाई गई डिटेंशन सेंटर की अफवाहें सरासर झूठ है। ये झूठ है, झूठ है, झूठ है।
तो मतलब तुम ये कहना चाह रही हो कि सरकार को इलीगल माइग्रेशन को रोकने के लिए कोई प्रयास नहीं करना चाहिए?
नहीं, बिल्कुल भी नहीं। हर देश के पास इलीगल माइग्रेशन को रोकने के लिए कानून बनाने का हक है, मगर सीएए बीजेपी के हिंदू राष्ट्रीय कल्पना को सच करने का एक मोहरा है जिसे मुसलमानों को टारगेट करने के लिए लाया गया है। अगर बीजेपी को असाइलम लॉ लाना ही था तो ऐसे कई अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्वीकृत मॉडल हैं जिनको वो अपना सकते थे।
भगवान का शुक्र है कि हम चिड़ियों को अपने होने का सबूत देने की या लंबी लंबी इमिग्रेशन काउंटर की लाइनों में खड़े होने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है।
अरे सीए पर हुए शाह प्रोपेगेंडा का असर तो देखो, आजकल हमारे काले भाई बहन भी अपनी धुन बदल रहे हैं।
Thank you, Priya and Raj, for sharing your views on the CAA. If you want to stick around and listen to experts about what the CAA rules are all about, you're welcome to do so. However, if you're leaving any comments before you leave that you would like to share with the audience, Priya?
Yeah, thank you, Rajuji. I think it was tragic that so many lives had to be lost. People incarcerated on frivolous charges, homes bulldozed, families disrupted, and now in limbo about their status, all on account of how ill-conceived NRC was, and now the CAA rules seem to be. My only hope and wish is that politicians stop using poor people as pawns in their game of checkers.
Thank you, Priya. Raj, any thoughts?
Hi, Rajuji. Hi, everyone. So it's a matter of fact that I rarely agree with Priya, but on this one, I totally agree with her. I've spoken in favor of CAA, but if the rules do not even benefit the supposedly primary beneficiaries, Bengali-speaking Hindus from Bangladesh, then maybe it's time to go to the drawing board as well. That's my thought.
Thank you, Priya and Raj. We may welcome you back again for the next Desh Videsh, which might be focused on Hindu phobia. Thank you. Good morning, everyone from the US, and a good evening to those joining from India. Thank you for coming to this important conversation on the Citizenship Amendment Act and its rules published recently. We have covered the discriminatory and unconstitutional nature of the act extensively, and over 200 petitions in opposition to the CAA have been admitted by the Supreme Court of India. Today, we will examine another lesser talked about side of the CAA, whether the onerous document requirements in the rules will prevent even its intended beneficiaries, namely non-Muslim refugees from Bangladesh, from filing successfully. For those who are not familiar, my organization, Hindus for Human Rights, advocates for pluralism, civil and human rights in South Asia, North America, and now the Middle East, rooted in the values of our faith, Shanti, Nyaya, and Satya. We provide a Hindu voice of resistance to caste, Hindutva, racism, and all forms of bigotry and oppression. Desh Videsh Conversation, Speaking Across the Divide, is a hybrid webinar series held in the Bay Area every month. The intent is to get people out of their comfort zones, even for 1 or 2 hours, to share the same space as others who may hold very different views on various matters such as democracy, faith, hate and phobia, and supremacist movement. We've had activists, lawyers, authors, academics, journalists, Dalit rights groups, etc. on our Desh Videsh series. In the past, we have talked about once with NPR and on NPR, NRC, and CAA, and Prashant Ji was there. On UAPA, caste reservations, Kashmir, Uttar Pradesh, California's law on caste discrimination, and the state of Indian media and so forth. The last Desh Videsh was about the nexus between Zionism and Hindu nationalism. Today, we have a stellar panel with us to help us explore the provocative theme, is the Citizenship Amendment Act designed to fail? The question mark at the end, of course, indicates that the jury is still out, and it's for you all to decide if the proposition rings true. All that our panelists can do is to discuss the serious problems with the CAA Act and rules from their proximity to what's going on the ground and in the courts. We hope that this conversation will raise awareness about the gaping chasm between the PR of the Indian government. I think one of them even said CAA is meant to wipe tears from our persecuted brothers and sisters, versus the reality on the ground for both Muslim and Hindu refugees. It's sad that despite 4 years on the anvil, the CAA rules appear to have been published with no consultations with the affected communities and is already headed to the garage for repair, so to speak. What is worse, the government seems to have little regard for hundreds of lives lost, thousands of lives rudely disrupted, and lakhs of people who have been put in a state of purgatory on account of the ill-conceived NRC and CAA. Before I introduce the panelists, just a couple of housekeeping items. The chat is not open. Please type your questions in the Q&A button. At the end of the hearing the panelists, we will answer as many questions as we can, or take down the questions for some of the panelists who may have to leave early so that we can procure an answer for you. At the end of the session, please make sure to complete the survey form to rate this session, as well as to make suggestions for future Desh Videsh. That said, it's my pleasure to welcome the guest speakers today, Prashant Ji, Teesta, and Ayan Guha, who is not here. As you all know, Prashant Ji is one of the most widely celebrated people's lawyer in the Indian Supreme Court. He has won many victories for the rights of the poor and underserved communities, and has been an active participant in many high-profile anti-corruption cases, such as the 2G scam and the Karnataka mining mafia. He has also been intimately involved with challenges to the NRC and CAA in Assam, and his latest victory for the people of India was the recent Supreme Court ruling with throwing out the electoral bond scheme as unconstitutional. Prashant Ji, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you so much for making the time amidst your busy schedule. He has only 1 hour that he will be with us. Let's make the best use of the time. Teesta Setalvad, a familiar name to activists across the world, is known for her steadfast pursuit of justice for the common people, often at great peril to her personal safety. She's been repeatedly targeted by both the Congress and BJP governments for her work and is currently free on bail. Her stubborn pursuit of justice for the family of slain MP Ehsan Jaffrey, who was the victim of a cruel murder in the 2002 Gujarat pogrom, is legendary. In recent years, her organization, CJP, has been on the ground in Assam, helping hundreds of families gather documents to prove their long-term residency. Not an easy task when officials were capriciously rejecting even genuine documents from Muslim families. Teesta, welcome, and we're honored that you've accepted our invitation to join our advisory board. Ayan Guha, an anthropologist from University of Sussex, our third panelist, who is not able to join us personally today, has kindly taped his remarks on a topic highly relevant to the implementation of the CAA in West Bengal and Assam, namely the precarious situation of Mathua Namasudras, who form the largest group of migrants to India from Bangladesh and probably form the largest community left out of the Assam NRC. His remarks are somewhat long, but I can assure you that if you listen to the fascinating history of the refugee CAA caste intersection, time will pass quickly. Tripti, my suggestion is that we play that video after you've asked all the questions of Teesta and Prashant ji, so that we make the best use of our time. Finally, it is my pleasure. I've already introduced Tripti. Tripti is a lawyer working on a broad spectrum of justice issues. Her work is informed by years of field work in some of the most remote parts of India and Nepal, partnering with communities that face acute and intersectional marginalization. She has extensive experience of working and writing on a broad spectrum of issues: housing rights, maternal health, refugee law, citizenship, and immigration. Tripti holds a master's in public administration from Cornell and is currently pursuing her LLB at Columbia Law School. Welcome, Tripti, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Raju. Prashant and Teesta, it's great to have you here. I'll start with you, Prashant, and then ask you a question, Teesta. Prashant, I think one of the things that, around CA that everybody or the pro-CA faction is talking about is how CA is a refugee law. Albeit maybe even a bad one. So could you talk about why or why not CA could fit within the framework of a refugee law?
It's interesting that the government of India talks of a refugee law when it in the Supreme Court says that there is no recognition for refugees in India in the context of Rohingya refugees. It has filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court that India does not recognize refugees, and India has not signed the Refugee Convention. And therefore, for them to say that we have brought in a refugee law, actually, unfortunately, this law was brought in entirely and solely for the purpose of further deepening the Hindu-Muslim divide in India, because it explicitly and deliberately excludes Muslims from getting the benefit of citizenship through the Citizenship Amendment Act. It specifically says only non-Muslim communities, namely Hindu, Sikhs, etc., minus Muslims, would be eligible to get citizenship if it is found that they have suffered only religious discrimination and not ethnic discrimination, and only from 3 countries, that is Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. It explicitly does not mention other neighboring countries like Myanmar or Sri Lanka. It does not mention other kinds of persecution, such as ethnic persecution, which the Rohingyas have been suffering from, ethnic genocide, actually, which the Rohingyas have been suffering from in Myanmar. And therefore, I say that the object was not to provide citizenship to refugees. The object was simply to use this. It was like an arrow shot out of the bow, of the communal bow of this government, and the only object was to further polarize Hindus and Muslims and show that it has brought a law against Muslims. So I don't think that the government is at all serious, and that's why we have seen that for so many years even the rules were not brought out, and even now some half-hearted, half-baked rules have been brought out.
Thank you.
Tripti, I'd just like to add a little bit over there, if you don't mind, because we've been working very closely with 3 sets of people. One is, of course, all the people who are victims of the or survivors of the citizenship crisis in Assam, which means Rajbanshis, Santhal Rajbanshis, Gorkhas, Namashudras, and of course the Muslim-speaking Bengali population. And we've also been working with a very interesting set of people, which is the Hindus who migrated from Pakistan. Now, the rules were passed on the 11th of March, 2024, as we know. And on 20th of March, a 31-year-old Debashish Sengupta hangs himself to death in Bengal, in South Parganas. And his only reason was a complete panic and anxiety attacks he was suffering for his father, who had been a migrant from Bangladesh. Now, official figures tell us, and these are published documents which we have, that 11 million Hindus have migrated to the country between 1964 and 2013. And the manner in which this documented test of citizenship has been put in such an manifestly arbitrary and unreasonable manner suggests very clearly that there's no way you're going to be able to supply those documents on affidavit, a ration card, an identity document, and proof of land records from the country of your origin, which means it's going to be completely open to corruption and a lot of intimidation. That's as far as the Bengali Hindus are concerned. Hindus from Pakistan, about 40 or 50,000 of them living largely in Rajasthan, but also in other places, in fact, also opposed the CAA 2019 amendment even before it was passed. That document has been shared with us, but it's a confidential document, so I don't want to talk about it here. But the reason why they said is that though we came with a passport and some of it, it's a completely manifestly arbitrary and manifestly unreasonable test. And I think that's the argument we need to make in a very sober fashion. That can you have a law, even if it is a badly conceived refugee law, which does not meet the tests of reasonableness and inclusiveness and, of course, arbitrariness. And of course, it is against the Constitution, as Prashant has said. But I think let's not forget the 2019 direct threat issued by the Home Minister, when he said that it's the chronology that we need to remember, because that is what they were concerned about before the election. Then, of course, the general election became about something else. But they said it will be the CAA, NPR, and NRC. So to extend the point that Prashant made further, I would say that this is a complete constant threat to the Muslim in India, both somebody who has never come from outside but has always been a resident, and those that may have migrated and are waiting for citizenship from outside. Now, all this amendment does, Section 2AB, is gives accelerated citizenship to this section within 5 years, whereas the other one is 11 or 12-year period. So it becomes very complicated, difficult to prove on the ground. And like Prashant said, what happens to the Baluchis, what happens to the Ahmadiyyas, what happens to the atheist from Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Afghanistan. And if it is supposed to be the RSS game plan of the unfinished agenda of partition, then why Afghanistan? Because Afghanistan was never part of undivided India. And what is this arbitrary cutoff date of 31st December 2014? Again, completely illogical.
Thank you so much, Teesta. I think I just want to add a little bit that, it's also a misconception that Muslims can actually use, or people who don't fall within the CAA can use the 11-year exception, because the 11-year application under the Act actually excludes illegal migrants. So people who have entered without any document become illegal migrants and actually can never apply for citizenship. So thank you so much for setting that context. Teesta, I'm very glad you brought about, you talked about the work that you did in Assam. Could you here bring in a little bit more about just the work on NRC, and really what are the lessons that we can learn from the way these citizenship laws were implemented in Assam, given what's happening, on CAA in Assam? And if possible, if you could touch on the link between the two, because I think, there's a lot of confusion about how the two are even related. So what do we learn from Assam and how are they linked?
Yeah, so first I'd just like to give you a sort of socio-political answer that, in Bengal, the whole CAA plank is supposedly something that even the ruling party is kind of extremely jittery about, because it's not sure about how the Matwa Nama Shudros are going to react in Bengal. So it's not part of their plank, okay? It's not part of their visible electoral plank right now. Though, of course, we saw that speech of the Prime Minister when he said that not everybody is going to be sent to detention camps. But in Assam, there's a different story. and that background we need to understand, which goes back to the Assam movement in the late 70s, which was a very, very strong movement. And I won't talk about where and how it was ill-conceived, but the whole question of illegal migrant, but it's a very emotive issue. I won't get into the right or wrong of it. But the recent statement made by Kiran Rijiju, the former Home Minister, Minister of State for Home and former Law Minister, very contentious statement. He's a controversial man in any case, but very contentious statement that he made when he said that the Chakma Hongmas will be, 100,000 of them will be settled under the CAA from Arunachal into Assam. Now that generated a huge undercurrent of anger within Assam, a state that was already extremely upset with the CAA being passed. Now, so, it's a very different dynamic in Assam when it comes to CAA from the rest of the country, because there is not so much the Hindu-Muslim issue, but it's a question of anybody who might be seen to be an outside. Having said that, just to explain to people, there are three-pronged ways in which citizenship is being denied to ordinary people in Assam. One is arbitrary and unreasonable exclusion from the NRC, which is the National Register of Citizens, an extremely ill-conceived project on which the state of Assam has spent rupees 1,700 crores. I'm very bad at converting that into dollars. My mathematics is not that good. But it's 1,700 crores of rupees has been spent by the state. And you're in a situation today where the final list came out on 31st of August, 2019. And 5 years down, we are almost 5 years down, people have not been given reasons for their inclusion or exclusion. And therefore, people are in a state of complete limbo. And it's actually meant a complete threat to their existence on a day-to-day basis. Besides, 2,700,000 people have been denied Aadhaar cards in Assam. And CJP, my organization, has also challenged that in the High Court. There's another challenge in the Supreme Court by a member of Parliament, but we've challenged in the High Court and the matter is pending. So why would the Aadhaar card, which has got nothing to do with citizenship, it's simply got to do with a biometric identification to enable you to access government schemes, bank accounts, and school admissions, being denied to 2,700 people? So the point is, when you do a demographic breakdown of the 1,900,000 excluded, there will be surprises, because the NRC process might have been aimed, and it was politically aimed at one section of the people demographically, but it turned out, and that's the lesson we learned in Assam. We started work there in 2017, that once you start this extremely arbitrary and unreasonable documented test for citizenship, when the United Nations tells us that 44% of Indians maybe, if you're lucky, live documented lives as far as the birth certificate is concerned. Even less numbers have passports. Even less people have bank accounts. How many people own a home in their own name? How many people have land in their own name? How many people have a court document in which they can prove legacy or identity? So, all the 14 documents that the NRC requires are extremely difficult to get. And then you have a completely corrupt bureaucratic approach where a small change in your or my name between a OO or II in our spelling names could mean that your application is rejected, or a small change in your date of birth, which happens in all our certificates across the country, whether it's a school leaving certificate or anything else. Women have been the biggest, 69% of those excluded are women, for two reasons again. One is, of course, early marriage, which means that they do not have a voting presence, electoral presence on the voting list in their maiden names. They have it automatically in their marital name. And that means that there's no link between their original birth names and the marital names. So it's a ridiculous situation through which exclusion happens. So NRC is one way in which there is this ridiculous exclusion. The other one is the Election Commission just saying that you are not a legitimate voter. And that has started from the lower level officers of the Election Commission, despite people being present for, and their parents being present for at least 6 elections or 3 elections. Suddenly you will find that you are a doubtful voter and you get a D-voter tag. And there have been political decisions by the government across political parties to say that SPs should ensure that this is settled outside court, but these are not implemented. And the third is the Assam Border Police, which is again under the Foreigners Order of 1946, an executive diktat. Without any prior inquiry, you have people just getting this notice from the Foreigner Tribunal, and then are in a complete mess. They have to sell what little land they have, what little wealth they have, just to be at the mercy of the foreigner tribunal, which itself is a unconstitutional creature because it doesn't follow the laws of evidence that a criminal court follows. I'm guilty unless I'm proved innocent. So on all these various counts, you find complete chaos reigning in Assam. But I think the whole unraveling of this crisis has led to a realization among Assamese people, including the Ahamias, that, this process has not been very reasonable because genuine, quote unquote, genuine Indian citizens have been denied their citizenship. But the chasms exist and the tensions continue.
Thank you, Teesta. Prashant, could you also add to the, would you like to add anything other to, just what is the link between the CAA, the NRC, and then the NPR, which is the National Population Register? Yeah.
So, see, Amit Shah, in a way, explained when he said that आप chronology समझिए. पहले हम एनआरसी लाएंगे फिर सीएए को इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे, पहले हम एनपीआर एनआरसी लाएंगे फिर सीएए को इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे. What he meant was, because you see the NRC process resulted in the exclusion, as Teesta pointed out, of a very large number of people who were really citizens merely because they couldn't show the kind of documents that they were requiring people to show. Many people didn't have those documents or had lost those documents, etc. But they were citizens. And therefore, it actually left out from the NRC a very hundreds of thousands of people who were really citizens. And therefore, Amit Shah said that, look, in this chronology, we will bring CAA after NRC so that those who have been excluded from the NRC, he had to allay the fears of the Hindus in Assam who had been excluded from the NRC, that, look, we will bring you back through the CAA. Now that you have been declared or effectively declared to be foreign citizens by being excluded from the NRC, we will bring you in through the CAA. He didn't realize when he said that, you see, this is a clear indication that all this was being done for their politics, for BJP's politics. Because somebody who has been denied citizenship under NRC, he has obviously filed an affidavit saying that he is an Indian citizen. And therefore, now he can't be given citizenship. Strictly speaking, he can't be given citizenship through the CAA. Because in the CAA, you have to claim that you have come from Pakistan or Bangladesh or Afghanistan. Therefore, in this process of just trying to do communal politics through this NRC, CAA, etc., the BJP has kind of landed themselves in a mess because they have just messed up everything. They have messed up CAA, they have messed up NRC. It was not properly thought through. It was all done for their communal politics. And therefore, it has landed us in this kind of mess.
Thank you, Prashant. Prashant, I want to follow that up with just a very specific question on the CAA. If it's sort of a three-part question, the first is, is CAA really incorporating religion as a test for citizenship? The second is, in addition to religion, there's so many petitions in the Supreme Court pending on the issue of CAA. So what are the other discriminatory nature of the petition of the CAA that the petitions allude to? And the third really is what is happening to the CAA petitions at the Supreme Court and what is the next step? And even if what is the expected sort of timeline on it?
Yeah, so I expect to answer your last question first. I expect the Supreme Court to actually list and start hearing these CAA petitions soon after the summer vacation, sometime in July, probably. July, August. So the religion did become a test because the CAA specifically mentions only certain religions and specifically excludes Muslims as well as atheists, etc., from those who can be given citizenship through the CAA. As Teesta pointed out, there are Muslims also who have faced religious discrimination even in Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. And then there are those atheists and people who do not fall into those religions. They have mentioned 4 or 5 religions, that is Hindu, Sikh, Jains, Buddhists, etc. But they have not mentioned Muslims or people who do not profess any religion. So it is clearly there is a religious exclusion. But quite apart from that, see, we have challenged it broadly on several grounds of discrimination. One is that it discriminates on the ground of religion by excluding the Muslim religion in particular and other people who may not have any religion, etc. Secondly, it discriminates on the basis of the countries that you come from. It just says only if you come from Afghanistan or Bangladesh or Pakistan. Why not Myanmar? So many refugees have come from Myanmar facing religious or ethnic genocide. Similarly, why not, if the idea was to give citizenship to refugees who have had to flee due to either religious, either persecution or genocide, then why not to Rohingyas? Why not to the Tamils, to the Sri Lankan Tamils, who've also had to flee from there? And thirdly, it only says religious discrimination. Why not ethnic discrimination? I mean, there are so many Rohingyas have come because of ethnic genocide against them. So it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be religious, it can be ethnic as well. So these are the 3 broad grounds that it discriminates on the ground of religion, it discriminates on the ground of countries where you are coming from, and it discriminates on the ground of only one kind of persecution and not the other.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you. Teesta, I wanted to talk to you next about the link between, just or how CAA is applying in Assam. The first question is, to your knowledge, have people started applying for CAA? Second is, you touched upon this a little bit in the beginning, but really, what is the sentiment of the NRC excluded population and the D-voter population in Assam around the CAA? And the third is a very Assam-specific complication, where even pro-NRC people are actually against the CAA, So could you sort of, and I think that would touch a little bit on this ethnocentric nationalism point that Prashant brought out. So could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just start again by just slightly more elaborating what Prashant said, okay, just a little bit, to put it in context. That you have, what are the petitions saying in the Supreme Court? And there are over 200 of them, by the way, 200 petitions. So it's going to be, it caused a huge question mark and a whole huge turmoil, this law amendment that was passed. And it was passed without even consulting the opposition. That needs to be stressed, by not sending it to a parliamentary committee, like many laws under this regime have been passed. So I think even the method of passing this law, it needs to be emphasized. And the suggestion of such a law was there in the BJP manifesto for the first time in 2014. And it was finally passed in 2019, December. So I think what we need to understand here is that Sikhs, Hindus, Jains, Christians, Parsis, and Buddhists, these are the 6 communities that are given this accelerated citizenship under the CAA 2019, which is process of naturalization and or registration, and from only 3 countries, as Prashant rightly pointed out, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Why is the marker only religion? Obviously to exclude Muslims, very, very clearly. Very, very clearly, the reason is to exclude Muslims because either the lawmakers just now don't know it or they want to ignore it, that Article 26(3) of the Pakistan Constitution actually says that Ahmadiyas, who's a minority, are not Muslims when they believe themselves to be Muslims. So you've not included Ahmadiyas. Then there is discrimination against Baluchis, there are Baha'is, and of course there are Sri Lankan Tamils who are already living in parts of Tamil Nadu. And the most searing question is about the Rohingyas, which has already been raised. So there is no logic about the inclusion or the exclusion, except that it is religion-based and therefore arbitrary and discriminatory according to Indian Constitution, which does not see religion as a marker being just under Article 14, 19 and 15 of the Constitution. So that is the first point. Secondly, I just like to share something before on the de-voter thing that, one of the fears among people who are denied citizenship in Assam, rightly speaking, is the dreaded detention camps. And these, let's not forget that there's one huge detention camp, apart from the six that exist just now, coming up at Gwalpara on 300 acres of land. The existing detention camps are only adjuncts to jails. So they're part of the jail structure. But this one is a huge 300-acre plot, which is kind of created a lot of dread as to what sort of a outfit it's going to be. And even Karnataka and Maharashtra under the BJP regimes, now Karnataka doesn't have a BJP regime, but previous government had allocated land for detention camps. So we did a list of Assam citizenship deaths, and there are 99 persons who have died as because of either health reasons or trauma or even suicide because of the citizenship crisis, which can be directly linked. We call them the citizenship crisis deaths. Now, who are these 99 people? If you look at the deaths that have taken place, 29 out of 99 died inside detention camps. Okay. Now, 41 out of the 99 who have died are Hindus. One is a person from a T tribe and one is a Gurkha. 11 of the 29 who died in detention camps are Hindus. So, you see the fallout of the crisis, and it's horrible that we have to undertake a debate by doing this demographic deconstruction in this fashion because of the India we live in today. Because actually human beings' lives going, it doesn't matter which community you're from. But I think this links up to the question you raised, that what is the sentiment vis-a-vis the CAA in Assam? I can safely say with confidence, and we have this discussion every other day with our wonderful team working there. We have a large team. We have about 35 persons full-time connected and 3,000 volunteers in 19 districts. And I can safely say that not only have people not applied under the CAA, but the Bengali Hindus, which is actually the Namashudras, who have also been sort of sought to be pleased by this law, by the political leadership, are completely either now become extremely quiet on the issue, meaning they're not pro-CAA anymore, or they're actually becoming anti-government. That is what we are seeing on the ground. Because they've seen the way it is panning out. They've seen the way the citizenship documented crisis has panned out in their state. And then they saw the rules. And when they saw the rules, as Prashant so rightly pointed out, that, if you already have a refugee certificate, and I'm again stressing that in many informal and formal ways, 11 million people, Hindus, were given citizenship between 63, 64 and 2030. All of those people will have to go through another test. I mean, it doesn't make any sense what you're doing. And this is what people have been trying to point out to this government, who has rushed through this whole process without any thought, because they don't want to look at what's actually happening on the ground, but are functioning as through, just on the dictate of a pen because of an ideological push that they are giving this whole effort. So the CAA, particularly in Assam, was resisted because there is a whole ethno-centric sentiment in Assam about any outside, regardless of which faith or religion that outsider belongs to. And that has roots in the Assam movement. Then there's a particular antipathy to whom they call the infiltrator, and that has also been fanned by extreme right-wing forces. When then that infiltrator means only the quote-unquote Bangladeshi Muslim, not the Bangladeshi Hindu. But it's not particularly empathetic to the Bangladeshi Hindu either. And you found suddenly with the NRC exclusion, all of this collapsing, because you suddenly realize that only about 5,000 people out of 1,900,000 people That is 5.5 lakh people were Muslims. The rest were all non-Muslims. That's what the demographic has shown us. So you realize that the political extreme right-wing intent was not met, which is why the Bharatiya Janata Party is now saying we want another NRC. I mean, just the thought of it is completely disorienting and crazy. But obviously, there's no logic or reasonableness in the government's policies and this threat of the detention camp is being held out at all times only to the Muslim community, whether in Assam or outside. We cannot run away from that.
Thank you, Teesta. Prashant, if you'd like to add anything to what Teesta said, and I'll just also pose a question to you so you can address both of them together. Legally speaking, what are the potential downsides for people applying for CAA? So if today I'm somebody who's already been excluded from NRC in Assam, and I apply for, I apply under the
They're
CAA.
not applying. They will not apply.
No. Yes,
because
absolutely.
they've assumed that they're Indian. The people who've applied for NRC clarification are asserting that we are Indians. We have never been migrants, illegal or otherwise.
Yes, which I think is an amazing work of mobilization on the ground. But if people were to apply, or if somebody does apply under the CAA and the application gets rejected, what is sort of the legal consequences of that application? And then just given the kind of documents that our rules are requiring, one, of course, very problematic thing is a letter from a community leader, right? So what is really the end game of this CAA NRC sort of twin problem, so to speak, Prashant? Prashant, you're muted.
If you apply under the CAA, you have to assert that you have come from one of these countries. Therefore, you are not an Indian citizen. You are asserting that you are not an Indian citizen. And therefore, once you apply under the CAA, you will not be able to claim that the NRC was wrongly done. And conversely, if you apply under the NRC for being an Indian citizen, or assert under the NRC that you are an Indian citizen, then you logically should not be able to apply under the CAA for claiming citizenship as a refugee. So therefore, these are two contradictory things, and that's why when this Amit Shah has got used to the idea that the government can do anything, that somebody who has been excluded under the NRC can still apply under CAA and they'll give him citizenship under CAA. This is the kind of mentality that these people suffer from, that they can do anything which is illegal, arbitrary, and get away with it. So in order to allay the fears of, which Teesta pointed out, of the majority of the Hindus who were excluded from the NRC, he said, we will bring you in through the CAA, without understanding that you can't do that because those people have already asserted that they are Indian citizens. And therefore, they cannot now make a contradictory assertion that they are refugees who have come from Bangladesh or Pakistan, etc. So it just tells you the kind of mentality that the BJP people and Amit Shah suffer from.
Thank you, Prashant. Teesta, I want to next ask you about the role that gender plays in this entire mess of needing documentation. And, we saw in Assam how women, at least in the de-voter process and also in NRC, women were one of the most disadvantaged groups. So just given the CAA and, again, what we've seen in Assam, how would the CAA, NRC, NPR really affect women and, non-cisgender male people?
So, okay, I just want to, again, for the sake of all our audience and the thing, just to mention that there's a Schedule 1A under the under the rules, and there's a Schedule 1B. Now, I mean, it's patently ridiculous what they're asking for. Under 1A, what they're saying, land tenancy records from the origin country. 3 things they want: the birth certificate from there, and identity documents from there. Now, this is persecuted minorities you're talking about, okay? And you want these 3 documents under one name. 1B is a ration card or an Aadhaar card or a letter or something from this government, something to show that you've got something official. And on top of all of this, you have an affidavit which you by somebody that, like you said, the community head, verifying that all of this is genuine. Now, who is going to do that for you or me? I mean, it is patently ridiculous. And then on top of that, the committee that sits, the district committee and the district committee is full of IB officials and government officials and all of that. So the whole process is kind of laden against that individuals. Yeah, it is patently against women, as we see in any of these huge crises all over the world, refugee crisis, migrant crises, because of the way patriarchal systems work in our societies and our countries vis-a-vis establishments. So number one, whether it's in the family, community, or vis-a-vis governments, women remain undocumented. I mean, you see that. I mean, even if they are in the workforce, working maybe more hours as housework, farm work, fish work, you won't have quote unquote proof of that work. I mean, there are endless studies. I mean, you know them, I would know them, that we don't have to substantiate what we are saying. So number one, that because women live largely undocumented lives in terms of their contributions, whether it is personal, political, economic, or whatever, that makes them even more vulnerable. Now, birth certificate, I would say they're probably equally discriminated, because registration of births across the board is very low. I mean, about 10-year-old figures suggested that we are just 44% registered by birth, and now they're trying. In fact, that is the other thing I think we should mention towards the end, is that already deviously they're trying to, we found through an organization we are working with in Bengal, they're trying to seed the Aadhaar card data as an NPR data, which is like so dangerous, that because Aadhaar card data is for a very different purpose. And if you just want to suddenly tell the country, if you win again the elections, that we've got an NPR ready and the rest are all out, it's going to create a lot of havoc and social turmoil. And this happened way back in 2015. But anyway, before coming to that, then when it comes to education, again, we know in terms of formal education system, women are still unlettered, left behind. Marriages take place before they attain majority, voting majority. So one of the NRC tests is always the voting card. So invariably you find that between the record of the birth, and again, like I said, there won't be a birth certificate, but you'll have to get somebody from the village to say that this woman was born here. And the name by which she's known in the village will be very different from the name by which she's voting. So you have a whole lot of issues to prove. Then legacy documents you have in NRC, which are kind of crazy, which means I have to prove that so-and-so is my father or mother. And, you've had quote-unquote terms emerge legally, which are so illegal, like projected father and projected mother. We are seeing this in our documents day to day, and it's just appalling. I mean, you have this kind of orders written by the foreigner tribunal calling somebody projected father and projected mother. So it's so that marriage, land records, school. So basically, all documents are less likely to be recording women's presence, women's contribution. So once any state authority asks you for proof, it becomes that much more difficult. Because remember, not only one document is enough. You need at least 6 or 7 corroborative documents all around. Then we have something called the char areas in Assam, which I don't know how many people are familiar with. That you have this beautiful river running through Assam, the Brahmaputra, majestic as it is, but it changes routes all the time and it's flooding all the time. And it has changed, I think, 21 times in the last 45 years. It's changed its path and huge floods have happened, which means villages have got completely submerged, changed areas, and people have migrated internally because of that. Now, that again means that your documents, and what is your document then about that village? That village document record has gone. So then how do I prove that that village is my place of birth or my place of rest? So it's like so complicated, so simple, so banal. And then, of course, the whole question people don't realize that migrant labor, there are a lot of people in Assam who are actually coming from outside, who are Hindi speaking, Bihari, Jharkhandi. You have the tea tribes who've been brought in by the British 150 years ago for cultivation. Where will they be able to prove a certain kind of document? Because they even today exploited labor. So, all of this adds up to a very, very difficult scenario, which is why when you first started the NRC process, you had a figure of 1.2 crore exclusions. I mean, then and the population then of Assam was 3.3 crores, which is like 1/3 of the population was out. Then it came down to 4,400,000, and then it came down to 1,900,000. And it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy beyond measure. And I think the only good thing I can say about CAA 2019 is, as a human rights worker on the ground in Assam, that it finally got Assam some attention, because people started looking there and saying, my God, this can also happen to us.
Thank you, Teesta. Yeah, I think one of my questions has always been, what is is there something that can come out of it that we as human rights activists can really use as a positive thing? And I think one issue that you touched upon, internal migrants, where does this whole obsession with documents and kagas leave people who move? Borders are porous, what happens to those groups? This Jugalbandi has between Prashant and Teesta, this has been extremely, it's been very enlightening. I think what we'll do now is we have a third panelist, Ayan, who work a lot with the Matwa, Namashudra community in West Bengal. We recorded about a 10-12 minute conversation with Ayan. So we'll play that, and then maybe we'll get into a few questions that the audience have raised. Is that okay? Okay.
Tripti, I'll have to go. You ask Teesta to take the questions because I have to go somewhere. Huh?
Sorry, Prashant, we'll miss you. We'll miss you. Yeah.
Prashantji, thank you. And if there are any questions pertaining directly to the legal matters in the Supreme Court, we will be sure to pass them on to you, because we have promised all questions will be answered. Thank you so much for taking time out.
Teesta can answer all the questions, actually. So
yeah.
She'll answer.
I think between the two of you, you've covered most of the doubts and questions already. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhushan. Okay, so we'll play the video from Ayan now. David, if you could take that on.
It's a little longer than what you mentioned, Tripti, so we can prepare the audience, but it is very gripping, the story of Matwa Namashudras based on extensive research.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. We have a speaker who's joining us remotely. We're very fortunate to have with us Ayan Guha. Ayan is the British Academy International Fellow at the School of Global Studies at University of Sussex. Ayan has done immense amount of work with the Namashudra community in West Bengal, and we're looking forward to hearing from him. Hi, Ayan.
Okay. Thank you, Tripti. Thank you, Tripti, for conducting the discussion, and Rajuji for arranging everything and inviting me. I'm looking forward. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So Ayan, I think the first thing that we want to hear from you, and you've written a little bit about it, is what role do you think caste plays in this entire conversation around citizenship? And maybe you could anchor the answer from a West Bengal perspective.
Okay, Tripti, the entire issue has a caste dimension to it, because the expected beneficiaries of this legislation, the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, are going to be the Motua Namashudra community of West Bengal and also of Assam. Now, Motua is a religious sect and Namashudra is a caste, which is a lower caste. Now, in order to understand the caste dimension of the CAA, we need to also understand the Motua story a bit. So very briefly, I will explain what the background of the Motua story. So the Namashudras were the single largest Hindu caste group in colonial times in the eastern part of Bengal, which later became Pakistan in 1947, and in 1971 it became Bangladesh. Now, the Namashudras in the late 19th century launched a powerful social movement against the hegemony and the domination of the upper caste, and this entire movement came to be based around an anti-Brahminical Vaishnava sect, which is the Matua sect. So most of the Namashudras are members of the Matua sect, and you can also say most of the Matuas belong to the Namashudra caste. So that's why you use the term Motua Nomoshudra community simultaneously. Now, so if you look at the Motua movement, you will see that Motua movement is an anti-Brahminical movement. So it was a reaction not only against the institution of caste, it was also to an extent a reaction or a protest movement against the the traditional or the classical version of Hinduism. So the movement or the propounders of the movement, who are Harichat Thakur and Guruchat Thakur, their philosophy negated and rejected not only the institution of caste, but very key dimensions of the traditional Hinduism, such as Avatarvad, Guruvad, the practice of preaching multiple and practice of worshipping multiple deities, and all kinds of Vedic rituals. So that's the one part of the story. Now, Motuas or the Nomoshudras are mostly concentrated in the eastern part of Bengal, and 6 districts of eastern Bengal to be specific, and all of those districts after partition they went to Pakistan. So therefore, this community is one of the worst victims of partition. And you also have to understand how partition-related migration happened in Bengal, because there is a fundamental difference in the way partition-related migration happened in Bengal and in Punjab. For example, in Punjab, there was massive bloodbath happened during partition, and as a result, there was a de facto exchange of population along religious lines. But in Bengal, the Nomoshudras of the lower caste did not migrate initially. So in the Bengal border, initially the migration mostly consisted of the upper caste, because they have the financial capability to cope up with dislocation. But the Nomoshudras were not in such a position, so therefore they did not want to migrate initially. And very interestingly, one of the tallest leaders of the Nomoshudras, who was the Jogendranath Mandal, he also urged the Nomoshudras not to migrate because he believed in Dalit Muslim unity, and he urged them to remain in Pakistan, and he felt that their interest would be better safeguarded in Pakistan. And very interestingly, this person, Jogendranath Mandal, became the first law minister of Pakistan. So the first law and labor minister of Pakistan is actually a Nomoshudra Hindu, who is Jogendranath Mandal. But what happened was that after 1949, the communal situation started becoming worse and worse. In 1949 December, there was a major riot in Khulna, and that riot spread across different districts of East Bengal or East Pakistan at that point of time. And even Jogendranath Mandal could not protect the Nomoshudras or the Hindus, and he got disillusioned with the state of affairs. He resigned from his ministry, and he also migrated. So as a result, what happened was that the Nomoshudras were left unprotected to an extent, and then they had no other option but to migrate, and the migration started. So unlike in Punjab, where there was a massive exodus of one-time migration or one-time population of exodus happened, in Bengal, it was not one-time exodus. The exodus started happening around 1950, and it kept on happening at different intervals on the heels of major events of communal disturbances. So, and one of the major reason for migration is also a legislation which Pakistan, implemented, which is the Enemy Property Act, and which later became Vested Property Act in Bangladesh. So this legislation is also used against the minority Hindu population to grab their land, and most of the Nomoshudras are peasants, so most of the people belong to, the Hindu peasants belong to the Nomoshudra caste. So this is also one of the reasons why they started migrating, and the migration happened throughout 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's still happening. So this is actually the background story, because that's the reason why, the caste is a factor, because some of the beneficiaries or most of the beneficiaries belong to this Motua Nomoshudra. This is very briefly the background of it. Yeah, you are mute. Tripti, I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Ayan. Okay, we'll just take time. So there's time to cut. David, are we good to go to the next question? Okay, we'll go to the next question. Okay, Ayan, good to have you back. So the sort of second question that we had for you was, how the rules as they've been enacted today would work in the West Bengal context. especially given the great amount of deference at the state level within the rules, and given the politics in West Bengal between the state government and the central government, and the peculiarities of the Nomashudro community that you just talked about, how do the rules take all of that into account, and how would it work in West Bengal?
Okay, so I mean, there is a lot of confusion at the moment regarding the rules, and there are some problems which people are pointing out regarding the rules, which I have also written about. The problem is that Nomoshudros, I mean, migrated, a large part of the Nomoshudro community migrated around 1970, 71 or 72, because that was the time of Bangladesh Liberation War. And then there was a massive migration which happened during that point of time. And when this massive migration happened, the Indian government took a policy decision of not granting citizenship under the registration clause, which is section 5 of the Citizenship Amendment, Citizenship Act 1955. So the government of India was kind of completely they decided at that point of time that we cannot take on, we cannot assume so much of load on us. So therefore, they decided that will not grant, there was a circular that will not grant citizenship to any person migrating from East Bengal after 25th of March 1971. So this became the cutoff date. So what happened was that those people who came after 25th of March 1971, they effectively became refugees. Okay. Before that, if you go back and look at Article 5 of the Constitution, which says that, which also gives you a cutoff date, which is 19th July 1948. So if you have migrated before that date, before 1948, 19th July, then that is a partition-related migration. People came from one side to another side, so you are automatically a citizen. But if you migrated after 19th July 1948, then you have to apply for citizenship. So those who migrated between 19th July 1948 to 25th March 1971, those people were eligible for citizenship subject to the fulfillment of the conditions. So they applied and they got citizenship. But the problem started emerging in 1971. So those who came after 1971, they were not technically eligible to hold the citizenship. Now what happened was that, but these people, when they came in West Bengal, they gradually, they also procured all the government documents like voter card, the Aadhaar card, and then PAN card, and all of this land tenancy agreement, and all of these government documents. They gradually, they collected all of those government documents. So effectively, they became citizen, de facto citizens, you can say. But in 2003, there was another amendment to the Citizenship Act, which says that if a person has migrated without proper travel documents, which means visa and passport, that person is technically and legally an illegal migrant. So therefore, those who were refugees after 1971, they now technically, legally became illegal migrants or illegal infiltrators. So now the whole problem started, and after 2003, there was a lot of suspicion regarding the Bangladeshi, that these people are Bangladeshis and all of that. And when they go for passport verification, when they go for registration in electoral rolls, when they go for caste certificate, when they go for making all of these documents, then they are told that you have to produce a document before which predates 1971, because that's the cutoff date. So then the entire citizenship issue becomes very clumsy at this point after 2003, and that the act which was the last nail on the coffin. So now, therefore, after 2003, the Motua Mahasangha, which is a community organization of the Motuas, they started movement with a demand for citizenship. So they want a document which will conclusively prove that they are citizens. So it's a certificate which they want from the government. So the movement started after that. And the movement became very strong in 2009, 2011, when there was a change in the government, because then the party politics became very competitive, and then every party started viewing different constituencies, and Motua also became a very important constituency. So that's the entire background of the issue. Now the rules for the rules have come. The rules have certain issues. first of all, there are multiple issues in the rules. One is regarding the documents. Now, what are the documents you need to provide? There are two proofs you have to provide. One is proof regarding country of origin, and one is a proof regarding the cutoff date. So there is a cutoff date, which is, the CAA cutoff date is 31st December 2014. So you are eligible to be granted citizenship under the CAA if you have moved into India before 31st December 2014. So you have to prove that you moved to India before this date. So that's the one proof you have to provide. And the another proof you have to provide regarding that, what is your country of origin? Are you from Bangladesh? Are you from Pakistan? Are you from Afghanistan? So you have to provide that. Now, the documents which you have to provide in order to prove you moved into India before 31st December 2014 are documents issued by the government. That means voter card, not voter card is not specifically mentioned, but in other document it comes, but Aadhaar card, PAN card, school certificate. So any document issued by government or government agencies can be used as a proof that you moved before 2014, because there is a date in the document. So most of the people have this document because they have Aadhaar card, voter card, and they have these documents, a PAN card. So they have these documents. That's not a problem. The problem comes with the country of origin document. So what is a country of origin document? The country of origin document is a document that has to be issued by the country of origin, that means if you came from Bangladesh, then you have to produce a document issued by the government of Bangladesh. That could be a school certificate. That could be, that could be a kind of any identity document issued by the government of Bangladesh or any agency of the government of Bangladesh. You have to produce this document. Now, most of the people, or let me say almost all of the people, do not have these documents. Okay. Now, those people, mostly they came as a result of some communal riots or some incident happening. So therefore, they could not bring proper documents. So they do not have these documents, the country of origin documents. And many of the people also, after coming to India, even if those people who carried this document, they destroyed these documents because these documents are proof that you are a Bangladeshi. So in order to evade the suspicion of being Bangladeshis, they destroyed this document. And even those people who retain this document, you can't expect their second or third generations to retain these documents. So because now it's the second, third generation, so you cannot expect a second or third generation migrant to have these documents. They could be, but they might not be also. So this is regarding the documentation issue. So, and most importantly, they also have to submit an affidavit saying, or rather declaring your country of origin. So if you're a Bangladeshi, you have to, in an affidavit, legal affidavit, you have to submit a legal affidavit saying that I came from Bangladesh. Now think of a person who says I came from Bangladesh in an affidavit, and then the application gets rejected. Then what happens? That means you, by your own admission, have declared yourself to be a foreigner. So therefore, all provisions of the Foreigners Act will apply to you. So this is a risky business. So that's the reason there is a lot of confusion right now, and people are afraid to apply. And what I have heard from my informants, because after the rules I did not go to the ground, but whatever I'm hearing from my informants, that if you have to apply online, first of all, you have to apply online and you have to upload this document. So if you do not have these documents, the online application cannot be submitted. But now I heard, I'm not sure, but I heard that now there is, now you can submit without submission of the document. Now you can apply because the online system has been modified. But when you go for verification at the district level committee, which will look at your application, when you go for verification at the district level committee, then you have to produce this document. Now, people do not have these documents, so how will they produce this document? So it's a rumor right now. I have heard this. I can't validate it, but there is some talk about this, that there will be some clause like this, that if you do not have these documents, you go to a police station, file an FIR, and you say that all of these documents I have lost. So therefore, this FIR copy or the police diary copy you produce, and that will be used as a proof, and that will be considered. So, there is lots of confusion right now regarding, how the rules will be implemented and how. So, and it seems to me that, consultation hasn't happened, because if consultation happened properly, then this kind of rule possibly would not have been formed, because I mean, these rules, I am not sure that these are going to benefit actually. The rules in the current form. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ayan. It was great having you, and I'm sure we will be in touch and have follow-up questions for you. Just for everybody watching, we do intend to get on a follow-up conversations with Ayan. So if you have questions for Ayan in the Q&A, please let us know. Thank you, Ayan. Take care.
Thank you, Tripti. Thank you, Tripti. Thank you, Tripti, for inviting and conducting this discussion. Thank you so much. Okay, have a great day.
Okay, great. Teesta, do we have you back?
Yep.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. That I think was, I think that conversation really highlighted what are the different, like it's not one homogeneous sort of solution that's being really talked about. So Teesta, we'll go to questions from the audience now. Before
I
we
think we
get
just need to add over there to what Ayan said, that you just see the cut paste. It's almost like a cut paste way in which the whole operation is being conducted, that you bring in the law without consultation. Then you have this huge agitation, then no rules for 4 years. And then you suddenly realize that the rules itself are causing problems, including suicides and anxiety. So you say, now you do this through the FIR rule. I mean, it's just completely ill thought out. And I think it just points to the fact that they're inherently problematic, the amendment itself. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, Teesta,
we have only about 15 minutes. I have to leave at 9. Yeah, I have time.
yes, we'll give you a hard stop. I think just one last question that I also did want to raise with you is, is there anything good or is there a positive way forward? For example, one thing that I see is that there is a lot of conversation and awareness around the issues of refugees in India, and like as a movement, we could potentially use this to build momentum around or, for a comprehensive refugee legislation, right? So is there anything positive that you see coming out of this, very tragic fiasco?
See, if you go back to 1958, I think Vijay Lakshmi Pandit had made that historic speech in the Union that India desperately needs a refugee law. And no government has really addressed that issue. And we have signed international conventions, but we've not really implemented them to the extent of actually getting ourselves a law. So the point is that in this very heightened, hysterical, ethnically sharpened atmosphere, communal atmosphere, discussion about a refugee also tends to collapse into the Hindu-Muslim paradigm and the Muslim or the anti-Muslim paradigm. So, of course, it's a good idea if any discussion like that were to emerge. But if you were to just see the kind of rhetoric that evolved around the Rohingyas, for instance, and we know that we've got 44,000 of them in the country, and this comes from people who are in power, so it becomes very difficult then to navigate the whole issue of building up a discourse. But yes, I think what we do really need, and finally you have somebody like Chidambaram, whose government was in power for 10 years, so I don't know what they were doing at that time, but who suddenly says recently, about 10 days back, that India needs a refugee law. So I guess however late it is, it's needed, and very much needed. And it's something that many of us have been talking about who are part of the human rights movement, that, we've had Iranians since in the 1940s. It's a substantial community living here. They're established, they are contributors, they are completely integrated. You have Baha'is, you have Afghanis, you have so many sections of our populations which are very much here, and yet we not really address them as a kind of a responsible democracy, maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the very vibrant Tibetan culture in Dharamshala, it's so vibrant, it's so beautiful, but that's very helpful. I think the next question from the audience is, without the NRC, will the CAA really have any teeth, or is it really just an election gimmick?
No, you see, it's the point is, you have the CAA just now, okay, and you have the CAA causing raising whatever questions that have been raised by all of us, okay. And I'm sure there are more questions which we've not raised as well, which are there from the CAA itself. But yeah, in one sense, unless the NRC and an All India NRC and the All India NPR is declared, will it actually be problematic? I don't know. It's already a weapon in the hands of a government because I think, as was mentioned by Prashant, and I think I'd like to mention that as well, that it is already a threat to those sections of the Muslims who've never migrated and have always been Indian, because you have a religion-based marker. And you said so yourself, Tripti. And so whether you apply or not. And then those who have come in as refugees, and whether it's Afghanis or others, Pakistanis who happen to be Muslims, are under a complete scanner. And, you already have a manner in which that they are living completely threatened lives. Just because you say that we are not going to deny that to them, it's not going to work that way, because people will probably use the clause of saying that, this amendment is only for these sections, and I'm not going to look at the overriding naturalization and registration clause, which applies to anybody. So there is a problem, a serious problem.
Thank you, Teesta. Teesta, the next question is, is there really a difference between the way CAA or CAA difference and relevance, I guess, about with CAA in 2024 versus CAA in 2019, 2020? What is the difference, legally speaking, and also in terms of like just politics and popular narratives around the law?
No, I think that question is slightly confused, because see, no law becomes operational unless you have the rules. I just explained to the person who's raised the question. So the argument that the government made, Union of India made to the Supreme Court, because the petitions were filed within 3 or 4 days of the amendment and within the next month. So there was a very quick response from a wide section of the Indian citizenry against this discriminatory law. At that time, the government used the excuse that, do not stay the law because we have not brought in the rules. And which is why when the rules were brought in on the 11th, the first petitioner immediately went to the Supreme Court and said that now the rules have come in, so why are you, now at least you stay the operation of the Act. But now the government, Supreme Court has not stayed the Act. So, you see the shifting goalposts. So I think there is no real difference. I think, but what is substantially different on the ground is that you saw, all of us, the world witnessed a very vibrant minority movement emerge after the passage of the law, which began in Shaheen Bagh and spread to the rest of the country, which was a very secular, articulated movement on the part of India's minorities. And then you saw huge repression from the government, so much so that many of the youth leaders who led the movement are in jail even today, whether it is Umar Khalid or Miran Haider or Gulfishan Fatima. And I think we need to remember that this is the sacrifice that they have had to, that, for a genuine protest, their whole protest has been criminalized and demonized and stigmatized. Even today, the Delhi police is constantly using the Shaheen Bagh and the farmers' protest as well, as if to suggest that they were a terrorist act or whatever it is. So legitimate protest has been criminalized in this country. So I think the political act, that is the backdrop of 2019. But between 2019 and 2024, I think because this government has brought the rules in the middle of the campaign on 11th of March, and they're not quite sure how to pitch it. Therefore, it's not become a hugely polarizing issue yet. But yes, there's a huge insecurity among the Indian minority community, the largest minority, which is Muslims, because the rules have been passed. Let's not ignore that sentiment simply because it's not articulated. Today, everything has been channelized for a very long drawn-out election that we are in the midst of, at 38 degrees Celsius heat, at 44 degrees in some parts of India. India is going to election, and I think that is why the minorities are channeling the energy into that. But there is a huge insecurity among 125 crore of Indians who happen to be Muslims.
Thank you, Teesta. I think Raju also had some questions that he wanted to discuss with you. So Raju, is there anything you would like to add, or any other questions that you want to ask?
It's not a question, but a comment on that somebody else made here about the CAA and its relationship with the NRC and PR. My perspective is at one time the government was trying to modify the NPR to add the where their parents came from, their parents' origin, city and state. Of course, that NPR never took off. What I see, that was the only missing piece of information from the older NPR to effectively actualize NRC. So the government was trying to collect it by redoing NPR, which didn't go. So my take is the CAA has effectively become what NPR would have collected by asking for all these affidavits from the country of origin. And therefore, it basically, once you apply under the CAA rules, you could automatically become a target of NRC if at some point they decided to do what they did in Assam. Maybe unlikely, but they will have everything they need about you if that happens. So if somebody mentions CAA rules as a backdoor entry for NPR, NRC, there's some merit to that argument, the way I see it. So anyway, that's all I had. Teesta, thank you so much for, we were expecting many more questions, but I think you and Prashant and Tripti have been so thorough that I think people got most of the answers they need. But only one question that remains unanswered is, what are doubtful voters? What exactly does it mean? If you can just take 30 seconds to explain to that the viewer about what is the voter, that week, and
it's a category that is sort of special to Assam. It sort of originated as a fallout of the Assam movement in the late 70s, began to be operationalized mid-1980s onwards. And it's just a very arbitrary distinction or sort of categorization, not distinction, categorization made by lower level bureaucrats of the election commission, who suddenly say that a set of voters are D-voters, they're doubtful voters. And actually our examination of over about 7,000 of these, or actually there are about a lakh and 127,000 of them, but we closely examined 17,000 such voters, that it is completely arbitrary because these people have actually voted before, and therefore there's no reason why they should be suddenly denied their fundamental right to citizenship. So, but the origin of the concept, if you want to understand better, is because there used to be this extremely shrill cry, which became almost hysterical during the Assam movement. It even led to the Nelly massacre, where 2,700 the Bengali-speaking Muslims were killed on 18th of February 1983, that there are a lot of fudge extra voters being dunked into voters lists. And the insinuation was that these are all Muslims. And therefore, so instead of trying to address the issue in a more logical way, which would be to actually see whether those, and we've definitely had migration, whether it's in Bengal or anywhere else from across the borders, legitimate migration because of for economic reasons or whatever. These are not some sort of, it's not some insidious process. Instead of trying to find that out, and the numbers are far less than is being made out, you actually just started this very arbitrary manner in kind of just declaring people D-voters. And that is why all parties came together, including the BJP, to take a decision that, the SP, the superintendent of police, can actually determine who is genuine or not. You don't have to go to court, but that is not being applied. Sorry, I take longer than 30 seconds for that because it's so complicated.
And if I could just add something there, so about 230,000 people have been declared D-voters in Assam.
But now it's only a lakh and 17 because they've been cleared. That's why.
And the D stands for doubtful. And and I think I've just shared an Amnesty report that really does talk about the peculiarity of this problem.
Thank you. Some people are already filling in the survey. Thank you so much. Hope that those of you online will take a few seconds to complete it because it will be very useful for us in planning the future. Tripti, our first time guest moderator, thank you so much for conducting this session. in a way that we are actually right there, 2 minutes from the end. We will continue these Desh-Videsh conversations. We're taking up another controversial topic for the diaspora, particularly the notion of widespread Hindu phobia. And there is actually a resolution in Congress condemning Hindu phobia, and many of us don't think there is widespread Hindu phobia. So let's talk about it. So, and that's one thing we are trying to do. The second thing is, this session has been so valuable. I really wish many more Indian Americans would watch it, because many of them are blindly following the narrative of the government. Oh, what's wrong with CAA? Why are you against it? Those who are against CAA are anti-India, and all those kinds of things, which really does not add to any conversation. And I really hope any of you here who were originally for the CAA, if you have some doubts now, we will have accomplished what our goal was. And we hope that we can take this video to more and more people in the Indian American community and to our lawmakers, some of whom indeed have spoken against CAA. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Teesta. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, bye, Tripti. Bye, bye, Raju.
Bye.
Okay, Raju, that